So I'm going to try to give a brief status report on the data citation implementation pilot that's being run as a supplement to BioCaddy, and with the participation of a number of the BioCaddy technical people. If you think of BioCaddy as an attempt to say that if a data set is out there and publicly available, we should be able to find it and access it in an efficient way, then the goal of the data citation implementation pilot is to make sure that if an article is published, that the data set goes out into the public accessibility, right? So, in other words, we're trying to facilitate data citation and biomedical research as the standard practice with common information models that are compatible with how BioCaddy wants to do business. So to do this, this is something that can't be done as a monolithic or top-down effort. It's an ecosystem effort, so we've coordinated efforts amongst publishers, repositories, identifier service providers, BioCaddy, NIH, and we've made it, I think, a good effort to integrate with and support BioCaddy prototype development. BioCaddy will be a major consumer of cited data, and major publishers are moving in this direction and are participating in our project. So what is DCIP based on? So a number of recommendations from the National Academies, CODATA, and NIH. The DCIP, which is the Joint Declaration of Data Citation Principles, and other existing and emerging standards, including DATS. We've coordinated with DATS, JATS, people from JATS, NISO JATS team participate in our project, and with community participation by publishers, repositories, and the like. So our approach is to coordinate early adopter best practices, try to help establish some benchmark standard implementations, report back to the community on lessons learned, and provide materials for people to use as the fast followers get involved in data citation. So we want to make cited data discoverable and consumable. So major expected output. So we have 4 main threads in this project. A publisher's thread is to develop a detailed roadmap for publishers of how to implement data citation. Repositories, our goal amongst the repository participants is to standardize landing page metadata subset applicable to data citation, as opposed to the broader discoverability metadata in DATS. A subset of that is specifically applicable to data citation. And identifiers, we actually are being rather ambitious and are trying to harmonize the major identifier prefix resolvers at EBI and California Digital Library. And we've had some important alignment discussions with DataCite as well. And the FAQs group in this project is basically to synthesize or summarize all the outputs of these groups and provide guidance. So publishers' roadmap development, the leads are Amy Canal and Helena Kusain. Significantly, Helena is basically in charge of the data citation implementation in Elsevier, and Amy has a similar role at Springer Nature. So they are actually both publishers intend to implement data citation across the board over time, starting with groups of early adopter journals within their stable of journals. We think this roadmap development is possible because Amy and her team at Springer Nature already developed an internal roadmap for Springer Nature, and a lot of the materials from that roadmap were made available and are being So all these publishers do things a bit differently. So we're sort of building similar sections in the roadmap for other publishers, and based on real experiences and problems that they face, starting with what are the instructions to authors, and going all the way to how does the publication look at release in HTML and PDF format. So we expect the roadmap to be ready for external comment in the October-November timeframe. It's in a late-stage draft at this point, but it needs some more work. The repository expert group is led by Martin Fenner, who's the Chief Technical Officer of DataCite, and Mercedes Croces, who's the Chief Data Scientist for Harvard Dataverse and the Harvard IQSS. And the attempt here is to standardize what's on the landing pages so that there's a good round trip interoperability between the citation in a paper of a data set, the landing page in the repository housing the data, and the actual data store, and that metadata is then available for harvesting and can be properly read out by BioCaddy or other discovery indexes or services, including personal reference managers. So we've standardized the landing page metadata elements. Here's a chart that a table that shows what elements from Dublin Core, schema.org, DataCite, or DAX would be used. So it's a crosswalk table. And we've also developed a model for both human and machine readability. So we want both of these things to be available. And this is an example from the document, the repository landing page metadata standardization document. So the required and the supplemental metadata has been defined with alternative vocabularies and serialization specified. We've developed both backward and forward compatibility modes. We want to be backward compatibility to have backward compatibility with all existing reference managers, so that the same way when you point your reference manager to the landing page for a publication, and it can properly scrape the metadata for the publication citation, we want the same ability for a data citation. Okay? But also, we want forward compatibility, and that involves use of more advanced vocabularies like schema.org, or serializations, I should say. And we are working closely with the people from Thomson Reuters EndNote, from Zotero, and the developers of Citation Style Language, which is widely used outside of EndNote, to make sure this is properly aligned. We expect the document is ready for review in October, and after that we're going to go forward with outreach to repositories, and we hope to, we've had a lot of success, a lot of involvement with particularly the EDI repositories. I think we want to see if we can get as many as possible to sign up for implementing these landing page standards. The identifier harmonization group is composed of people from the EDI, Elixir, the California Digital Library, which handles the digital assets for the whole University of California system, and it's a very, very major provider of digital identifiers through the EasyID service. Jeff was a very helpful and willing participant in this group as well, and I think I can see Ian in the back there. So this group, one of the key issues here is if you look at this generic example of a data citation, you see, which is, I think it comes from a presentation by Merced. You see a global persistent identifier there, and just before that, you see in braced square brackets, accession. So accession numbers are what are commonly used to identify data sets in biomedical research, but they're not globally resolvable. And we think that there are two ways to handle that, and the EBI has developed one using based on the identifier.org protocols, and the California Digital Library has another approach, somewhat different but similar, based on the NTT resolver. And basically what we've gotten them to agree to do is to use the same repository and the same models for resolving, for globally resolving accession numbers. So if I say PDB colon something or other, it should know how to resolve exactly and precisely to the PDB landing page. So and then we have a draft RFC that's in revision right now for this model. And one of the interesting things, well, let's just say that the current tasks that we're working on a series of technical calls is to complete rules definition, and I can go into that later with anybody that wants a sidebar on that, and explore further resolver system standardization. So that means, would the EBI and the CDL be willing to actually use the same base software for their resolvers and have it maintained as an open access system, or open source software system? And I think that actually helps both of these groups a lot, because you tend to have small groups of people maintaining these systems, and it spreads out or widens the group of software maintainers, and makes it has the ability to make the software be more robust to change over time. So we're looking into that. We don't guarantee that we're going to get there, but we know that we can do what we want by both harmonizing on the same registry. Lastly, the FAQ primer group, Marianne Martone and Joan Starr from the CDL are leading that, and the major deliverables are a primer on data citation, sort of a little introduction for people just getting into it, and a set of FAQs for repositories and publishers. The repository FAQ is done. Publishers version 0.1 is ready for comment. And I think I've really learned a lot working with these groups, and I think it's pretty extraordinary, really, that all of these participants are kind of jumping on the bandwagon. It shows quite a recognition across the ecosystem that really one of the first sort of the zeroth order reuse of data requirements is to validate the science in the publication, right? And that we need to really support the robustness of science by making the data available. So just to conclude, I'll say that major publishers and repositories are participating through this project in developing common data citation technologies and approaches that are going to be harmonized closely with BioCaddy technical development. And again, we work closely with Jeff and with Susanna on this. And the DCIP deliverables are now in a late draft stage. We are helping to enable the ecosystem around BioCaddy for long-term success. Any questions?